Hello and welcome to another Time Between Times video. It's the Sunday before Christmas 2020 if you're listening to this when it was first uploaded, and as you may know there have been some changes and some of us will be spending a lot of time at home this Christmas. As I've said, I will upload a video every day between today and the 24th, so that's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday. You will have new fairy stories, new folklore for you to listen to. I hope that even though it's just a small thing, it can bring you a little bit of happiness, a little bit of respite in this really dark time. Stick together, hold it together, and we'll get through this, my friends. So, where do we start? I have a great tale for you today. I thought, shall I stick with the dark fairy tales or shall I go for something a little bit brighter? Well, no, you seem to be enjoying the dark fairy tales, so we'll have another one today. So, ladies and gentlemen, sit back, relax. Let all your cares and strives disappear and lose yourself for just a few moments in the time between times. The time when it is neither night nor day, but the sun has gone and the sky is grey. The time for stories, the time that people see ghosts, the time that people see lights in the sky, the time that people see fairies. So here we are at the time between times for another tale with me, Owen Staton. Let us pretend that all our modern woes have gone and we are sat at the fireplace. We can hear the howl of wolves, we can hear the howl of bears, but we know we are safe here, the time between times, where I will tell you the tale of the curse of Pantannas. A dark tale indeed that happened many hundreds of years ago when a farmer called Myrig became sick and tired of the noise the joyous fairies made on his farm every night. When the night grew dark and he was tucked up in his bed, the fairies would dance and sing and make merry on his land. Every night he would shout at them to be quiet. Every night he would rush out into the night and bid them to leave him alone. But as fairies did, as the Tylwyth Teg did, this is what they carried on doing. And every night they carried on dancing. They carried on making merry. And Myrig carried on feeling sick to his stomach of all this merriment. He went to see a wise woman who lived in the village, alone, in an old cottage, away from everybody else. He knocked on the door and he said to her, "The fairies are making my life a misery. What can I do to get rid of them?" She turned to Myrig and with a hooked hand she said, "Give me one night's milking on your farm and I will tell you what to do." This he agreed. What will happen is that after the next night when they make merry, look to where all their circles, their rings and their gathering places are and plough over them, totally destroying them. The fairies will not return. As simple as that, said Myrig. I will do that. So the next night the fairies gathered again on his farm, and Myrig went to bed and was awakened all night by the dancing and the merriment. But the next morning he took his plough and ploughed over the land. Ha! He felt a great happiness and danced a little jig of his own. But just as he was returning to his house, he heard a voice crying out across the meadow, "Vengeance cometh, fast it approaches." He looked around, could not see where the voice had come from, could not see who had uttered it, but soon forgot. Spring turned to summer, summer turned to autumn, and Myrig was getting ready to gather in his crop for the harvest. One day he was strolling back from church to his farm when, out of the corner of his eye, sat on a rock, he saw something move, and then saw that it was a little man dressed in a red robe. The man looked up at Myrig in a voice that boomed from the mountain, said, "Vengeance cometh, fast it approaches." He then disappeared. Myrig was shaken, of course he was, but he had heard this voice before and nothing had happened. The morrow he was to begin his harvest. He was beginning to plough up his fields, to bring in his crop for the winter. And he went to sleep, and slept the sleep of the dead, quiet and serene, in the morning, at the time between times, he was awoken by the smell of burning on the wind. He got up in his bed, looked out of the window, and to his horror all his fields were ablaze. The fairies had burnt his crop to a cinder. He walked out. The fire died down, leaving him nothing in the harvest, and a bleak winter ahead of him. He begged on his knees, "No, please, why have you done this? I will give you back your dances, I will give you back your fairy rings, but please, please give me something." A voice to his left called out, and he turned around, and there was the fairy with a red robe once more. "This is but the beginning," said the fairy. "No, please, I beg you, I will give you anything. Let it stop, let it stop. This is a horror, this will destroy my family. I will give you back the places that you wish to make merry, I promise you." For just a moment, the little figure seemed to have a tinge of regret in his eyes. "It is not my word to say, but I will take it to the king of the Tylwyth Teg. Meet me here 3 days hence," said the young figure, and disappeared. For 3 days Meirig did not sleep, aware and awake, and in worry of what would happen. But at the time between times he returned, and sure enough, there was the small red figure. "I have spoken to my lord. Once he has said his word and said his deeds, they cannot be rescinded. But since you have shown great remorse, know this. The vengeance will not come in your day, nor the days of your sons. The vengeance will come in the future." Meirig knew great relief. No longer did he lay awake at night, wondering what would happen. But always in the back of his mind was this utterance, this curse. But he lived his life well, and died an old age. And so did his sons, and the sons of his sons were old, and one of them was called Madog, a proud young man who was to marry a maid called Teleri in the local church. There on the farm of Pantannas they were to live out the rest of their lives in joy. Christmas Day they met at the church in the village, and at Christmas Day they were married. And there at midday on Christmas Day the church bells rung, and the village all rejoiced. But as soon as the bells stopped ringing, a voice boomed out. "Vengeance cometh, fast it approaches." The congregation looked around. The guests at the wedding all looked around and could not find where this voice had come from. Madog and Teleri knew nothing of the curse, so went back to the farm in Pantannas. The night grew dark on their wedding night. The time between times came. It was Christmas Day, and far away they could hear the sound of hymns being sung, and snow started to fall on the house. And Madog stood up suddenly. "My love, I've heard a sound outside. I'm just going to take a look to see what it is." With that, he left the house, walked off into the night. Teleri watched him go from the window until he was over the brow of a hill, and then lit the fire and cooked their supper, waiting for him to return. He did not return. Days turned to weeks, weeks turned to months, months turned to a year, and all the villagers went out and looked for him in this time. Teleri wept every night, for he was not to be found. But Madog did not return. It is said that every night for the rest of her life, Teleri, on Christmas Day, stood on a hilltop overlooking the farm and looked out across the roads to see if her husband would return, until her auburn hair turned grey and her back became bent. There the old lady died on the farm Pantannas and was buried there. A nephew took on the farm, and 100 years passed when his sons and daughters had sons and daughters who then took on the farm. But But one Christmas night, that farmer was cooking their tea. A great goose for Christmas Day. His farm, family all gathered around him. When at the time between times, the door swung open and in walked a young man. They all turned to him. They were expecting guests. It was Christmas Day, but this person they did not know, although he looked vaguely familiar. When challenged, the man introduced himself as Maddock and was surprised that the farm looked different, for he had just returned. He explained that on what he thought was Christmas night, on his wedding night, he heard voices and singing outside, left to take a look, followed them away from the farm, away from the farm, away from the farm. Never quite found the source of the singing, but then turned around. Felt maybe an hour had passed before returning to the farm at Pantannas, to his love, Teleri. The farm was totally different. The house was totally different. The people were totally different. And 100 years had passed. He sat in a chair, looked up at his relatives, at their strange dress, at the way the farm was different, and realised that he had been the final victim of the curse of Pantannas. As he sat down, a voice seemed to boom from the fireplace. Vengeance has been delivered. He lived the rest of his days in the farm. Nothing else was seen, but he was a man out of his time and became famous Wales over. And every Christmas night he would stand outside and raise a glass to the family he had lost when they upset the Tylwyth Teg. And there we have it, my friends, the tale of the curse of Pantannas, one of the great fairy tales of Wales, and one for you this Christmas week or whenever you're listening. Please, if you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, leave me a little comment at the bottom. It's always nice to hear something from you. Stay safe, everyone. Stay safe. Look after your loved ones. Don't upset the fairies. And enjoy your Christmas time. No stop.